Back here in Cooperstown, a glorious summer afternoon as we await the induction speeches and acceptance speeches of the class of 2004 in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersly going in. Paul Molitor going in primarily as a designated hitter, and among members of the Hall of Fame, Molitor played more games as a DH than either Reggie Jackson or Eddie Murray, though Molitor was a very versatile player. Certainly is most known, Tim, for his great hitting stroke, top 8 all-time in hits. There was an encounter between Molitor and Ted Williams.
Well, Molitor told me the story once about when he went to a banquet and Ted Williams was there, and Ted Williams was talking to Joe DiMaggio, and Williams sees Molitor walk in the room, and he runs across the room, blows off Joe DiMaggio to shake Paul Molitor's hand and said, "You are a great hitter." And he said, "What are you thinking when you got an 0-2 count or whatever?" And Molitor, who's like one of the smartest guys in the world, was completely hubba-da-hubba-da. He didn't even know what to say because he just watched the greatest hitter of all time blow off Joe DiMaggio to come over and shake his hand and tell him what a great hitter he was. He said that's one of the greatest moments of my whole life.
And another occasion, Williams was asked, "Who do you see when you see Molitor?" And he said, "I see Joe DiMaggio."
Go look at the tapes. Only Ted Williams could have seen that, and he's got it perfectly.
And it's not just a hitter, though. I mean, Molitor was a great all-around player. The thing I think that you, in conversations that we've had, is that you notice his base running skills.
Well, he's the greatest base runner I've ever seen. First to third, first to home. Nobody ever did it better than Paul Molitor. Stole signs better than anybody. Stole bases better than anyone. Relayed signs. Best I've ever seen.
Paul Molitor, great all-around player, that going in primarily as a designated hitter. 3,319 hits in his great career. Dennis Eckersley also going in to the Hall of Fame as well. And we will hear from both of those gentlemen this afternoon. And we will continue to tell you stories and to try to put into perspective their great careers. Now we go back down to the podium and Jane Forbes Clark, who is the chairman of the board of the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Thank you, George. The Hall of Fame's mission is to honor excellence, preserve history, and connect generations. And I don't think there is anywhere that that mission is more clear than here today at this ceremony. So as we begin today to honor excellence and preserve it for many generations to come, I would like to ask Drew Olson, who covers the Milwaukee Brewers for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and is the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America, to join me. Our first presentation of the afternoon is the J.G. Taylor Spink Award. The award has been presented annually since 1962 for significant contributions to print journalism in baseball. This year's recipient, Murray Chass, has been covering baseball since 1960, the last 25 years for the New York Times.
Thank you very much. You look good today, Cooperstown, especially those people in the euchre seats over there. Somehow, Bob, there was a mistake. Bob's down front. He didn't, that'll be corrected soon. This is the best day of the year for the baseball writers because it's one of the few days that we all agree, for the most part. And we are a very passionate and opinionated group, and that sometimes makes consensus elusive, but it also makes it very sweet. And in January this year, we all agreed that Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley belong on this stage today, and that they're going to look very good in bronze in that wonderful museum on Main Street. On behalf of the writers, I'd like to congratulate Paul and Dennis. Yep, you'll be hearing from them in a little bit. It was a great winning streak for us because we also agreed this winter that it was time for us to give Murray Chass our highest honor. Murray, come up here so I don't mess this up. Murray Chass pioneered baseball reporting on labor and business issues, helping redefine how teams were covered. A respected journalist for more than 40 years, he's distinguished himself as a reporter of exceptional depth and ability with legendary accuracy. A 1960 graduate of the University of Pittsburgh, Chass began his career with the Associated Press while still in school. He became a full-time writer with the AP in 1960. He moved to the New York Bureau Sports Department in 1963. And in July of 1969, the New York Times hired him to write baseball roundups. He was then named the Yankees beat writer in 1970. It was one of the toughest jobs in our business. And he's known for his tenacious reporting and covered the Yankees until 1986, becoming one of the first writers to cover an entire organization and not just report the games. Chas also would become one of the first national baseball writers and columnists. His impact has gone far beyond the quality of his work. He's a renowned labor writer in all sports since the 1970s, and he became the Times' national baseball reporter in 1986, and he quickly rose to be one of the elite in his craft. He's one of the great truth seekers in baseball journalism and all of journalism, and it's a privilege on behalf of the writers to honor Murray. Thank you. You guys will take a picture here. Where do you want us? Step right out, Murray. One more over here. Okay, sure.
These pictures here. There we go.
A year ago, I watched this ceremony from a bed in the Neurological Intensive Care Unit at New York University Medical Center. I can tell you unequivocally, it's better to be standing here than lying there. I have never been big on awards in the newspaper business. I believe we prove ourselves on a daily basis, not by submitting an article or a column to a group of editors who very likely never reported and wrote or did so and failed. But the Spink Award is different because it is awarded by other reporters and columnists, and I humbly thank those who made me their choice this year. My mother used to tell people that I had wanted to be a newspaper reporter from the time I was 8 years old. I also recall that when I was younger than 8, I wanted to be a garbage man. I don't know why I changed my mind, but I'm glad I did, because I have loved what I've done for the past 45 years. In my early years at the New York Times, I covered baseball and pro football, but there came a time when I had to choose between them. It was an easy choice. With games every day and news developing year-round, baseball was the more legitimate and challenging beat to cover. Unfortunately, too many baseball writers of recent vintage don't want to cover the beat. So many of them either don't like the daily grind or don't like all of the off-field developments that have intruded on the games on the field. I feel I thrived on the off-field part of the game. I thoroughly enjoyed covering non-game issues and as well as non-baseball stories. The World Series earthquake, for example, because they challenged me as a reporter, and I thought of myself as a reporter who happened to cover baseball. I would encourage young baseball writers to adopt that attitude. They will be better for it. But the first thing they have to do is cover the beat for more than the few years, if that long, than they cover these days. In New York, for example, the turnover has been startling. In recent years, baseball writers for the major newspapers have averaged 2 years or less on the beat. In many instances, before they've learned much, even though they think they know everything, they want to become columnists. Then, when they write columns, instead of picking their spots to criticize, they often display their ignorance and worse, show a mean-spirited attitude toward the people they write about. Their style shows a decided lack of professionalism and that absence hurts the credibility of all of us with the people we cover.
Murray Chance pulling no punches in his acceptance speech. He is the winner of the J.G. Taylor Spink Award for contributions in journalism. We will continue with our coverage of the 2004 Hall of Fame induction ceremonies from Cooperstown after this.
Earl Weaver would not have liked him. When the Orioles came to New York, old friends, some newer friends.
Back in Cooperstown, our coverage of the 2004 Hall of Fame induction ceremonies continues. Murray Chance of the New York Times is at the microphone now. He is the recipient of the J.G. Taylor Spink Award for contributions to baseball through journalism.
No mistakes in spelling or grammar. My father, who also had little formal education, was instrumental in my career because I inherited from him his desire and his ability, my desire and my ability to write. In recognition of his contribution, I have put together stories and essays he wrote as a young man and have published this book for our family. I am proud to unveil it here today on one of the proudest days of my life, and I am pleased that you could share it with me. Thank you.
Our next presentation is the Ford C. Frick Award. It's been presented annually since 1978 for excellence in broadcasting. This year's recipient is a legendary voice in the Bay Area, broadcasting for both the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. And it's my pleasure to ask ESPN's lead analyst, the Vice Chairman of the Baseball Hall of Fame, Hall of Famer Joe Morgan, to present the award to Lon Simmons.
Thank you, Jane. I lived in the Bay Area during one of baseball's golden years. Mays, McCovey, Koufax, and Lon Simmons was the announcer, and I listened to him every night. I mean, every single night I listened to him. And I was a Giants fan at that point, later to become an Oakland A's fan as well. But my heroes were Mays, McCovey, Cepeda, Marichal, and Perry. And through Lon Simmons' broadcast, they all magically came alive for me each and every day. In fact, he did such a great job that when I went to the major leagues and started playing against these great players, I felt like I knew them all individually. That's what Lon Simmons brought to all of us who listened to him every day. And as Jane said, he was a Bay Area broadcasting fixture for more than 4 decades. Lon Simmons utilized his distinctive baritone voice, irreverent sense of humor, and unassuming personality to become a fan favorite. Simmons called games for the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland Athletics for 41 years. As a youngster, Simmons' athletic talent led him to a minor league baseball career, but an arm injury forced the young pitcher into a different line of work. His first baseball broadcast position was with a semi-pro league in Marysville, California. Simmons' big break in baseball came in 1958 when the New York Giants moved to San Francisco. He joined Russ Hodges for the team's inaugural broadcast for their new home. Simmons retired in 1973 and then returned to the Giants in 1976. He then moved across the bay to Oakland, where he broadcast Oakland athletic games from 1981 to 1995. From 1996 to 2002, Simmons retired.
That's how you grow up, and that's who you remember as your first eyes and words from the ball club. Russ and I were laid back. In fact, we got letters saying that it was addressed to rigor and mortis. And I got one of the great letters from all time, my favorite, where the guy said that I was like the cotton in an aspirin bottle. You didn't know what it was there for, you just knew it aggravated the hell out of you. But I will say this, that to just paraphrase the words of my high school buddy, Abe Lincoln, The people that voted for me let me know that for once in my life, I wasn't just mediocre, that I had pleased somebody some of the time, if not all of the time. And I certainly thank you all. I thank the Hall of Fame. I thank the Giants and the A's and all the writers and the broadcasters. Thank you.
Lon Simmons, 2004 Ford C. Frick Award winner. His broadcast partner, to whom he referred several times, Russ Hodges, won the award back in 1980. Saw some of the personable spirit that some of you around the country who might not have had the pleasure of hearing him do games could understand why he was a beloved announcer. And Tim, I think in this sport, it's one of the beauties and one of the good fortune things of our business is that you're able to connect with listeners sometime and they feel as if they know you.
Absolutely. I mean, we all grew up listening to a certain broadcaster, and it really didn't matter if the guy was any good or not. He was our guy, and he's the guy we went to bed with every night with a transistor up against our ear. I did that. Everybody did that at some time or another. And Dennis Eckersley tells the story that he used to go to bed with Lon Simmons in his ear, and here they are going in together, and Lon Simmons was great.
It is a special day, certainly for the Simmons family and for Lon as he picks up the Ford C. Frick Award, and you see Murray Chance there from the New York Times, who won the J.G. Taylor Spink Award for contributions in journalism to baseball. And coming up in just a little bit, Hall of Fame class of 2004, Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley. Going into Cooperstown, we will hear from the igniter and the closer coming up as we continue in our coverage of the inductions.
Guy sitting next to me.
Back here in Cooperstown, New York, induction weekend for the 2004 class in the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's a picture postcard setting here in the hills and the countryside of New York, Cooperstown, right on the banks of Lake Otsego there. You can see all of the boats there making a beautiful scenic setting. It's almost like a throwback in time to come to the streets of Cooperstown, and that's something that we get to do every year during Hall of Fame weekend. Reese Davis and Tim Kirkchin with you here. We will hear from Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley, the class of 04, in just a bit. But also as part of the weekend, Tim, they are honoring Harmon Killebrew. It was 20 years ago that Harmon Killebrew was inducted into the Hall of Fame. 50 years since he started his professional baseball career. And when we talk about the great power hitters of all time, sometimes he's not one of the guys that leaps to the front of your mind.
Right, and that's really unfortunate. 573 home runs, 8 40 home run seasons. Only Babe Ruth with 11 had more 40 home run seasons in his career than Harmon Killebrew, and yet it took him 4 tries before he got into Cooperstown. So I find it interesting that we're asked all the time, is the 500 criteria going to be changed because of recent years? Here's a guy who at 573 was in the top 5 of all time and had to wait 4 years before he got in. That was a mistake.
Do you think that the 500 plateau will not mean what it does now in future years?
Well, I think so. I mean, we have 20 500 home run guys right now. In 10 years, I've done the research, we're going to have 30 500 home run guys, and not all of those 30 are going to get in the Hall of Fame from what I can see. I think Fred McGriff is going to be the first test case. He's at 493, and I don't see him getting in at this point. I think a lot of things have changed with this given the era. I maintain, though, let's examine each guy on his own merits, and instead of saying, oh, it's a juice ball era and everything's going in the hitter's favor, let's examine it one by one instead of throwing a blanket over all of them. We're watching some great players today.
Now, you get an opportunity to cast your ballot. How do you weigh a guy, say, with the longevity to put up some huge numbers overall versus a period of time in which perhaps he was a dominant player?
Well, I weigh both. First off, a lot of people hold it against somebody for longevity. I gave it to Don Sutton for longevity, that he never missed a start for 23 years. That works a lot for me. Yet, you still have to examine the prime of a guy's career. And sometimes if he has 10 great years like Kirby Puckett, that's enough. And that's why someone like Frank Thomas has to be looked at for those first 8 years when he was Jimmy Fox. So it's longevity and it's prime. It's a combination of the two. That's how I decide.
Always a staple of Hall of Fame weekend is Johnny Bench. Johnny sang last year in Daniel Rodriguez's place when he couldn't make it to the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. Johnny helped out singing the national anthem. Daniel Rodriguez, America's tenor, able to make it this time. Johnny always on the minds this time of year, especially when you start looking at what Mike Piazza's done, breaking the home run record for catchers. what Pudge Rodriguez is threatening to do in Detroit as a catcher. How do they compare to Bench?
Well, Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher of all time, and that is indisputable as far as I'm concerned. When you look at the power and you look at the defensive ability, and there isn't a catcher alive that ever threw better than Johnny Bench. He did it on championship teams. He won 2 MVPs before he was 25 years old. Nobody loves Mike Piazza and Pudge Rodriguez more than I do, and nobody understands what Yogi Berra did more than I do, but none of them is as good as Johnny Bench.
Johnny Bench once said, "There's not a runner alive I can't throw out." On the Legends Roundtable on Monday, we're going to have Johnny Bench and Lou Brock. Maybe I can challenge them now at this age, Johnny, to get in the squat and see if Lou can go 90 feet on him, you think?
I'll take Johnny. He can still throw.
We will continue here from Cooperstown induction ceremonies for the 2004 class in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Crowd is gathered and they are waiting to hear the words from Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley, the igniter and the closer, going to speak on their way into the hall in a bit. Back here in Cooperstown, on the grounds of the Clark Sports Center, this is where the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies take place, just down the road from the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum here in picturesque Cooperstown. Fans are waiting to hear the words of Dennis Eckersley and Paul Molitor. Reese Davis and Tim Kirchin, glad to have you with us here on Hall of Fame induction weekend. And Johnny Bench is going to join us in just a second here. We mentioned that Johnny Bench is a man of many talents. Here's Johnny Bench in the 7th inning stretch time.
We as Hall of Famers thank all of you fans for showing up today and being a part of this great Cooperstown. And we want to say, after last night's visit to the Hall of Fame, we are all amazed and in love with the Hall of Fame and the renovations and all of the new things. We hope that all of you have had a chance to see those. It was tremendous last night. And we certainly owe a great amount of gratitude to Jane Clark for all the things that she's done for the Hall of Fame, and she has been remarkable in it and our perfect host. You know, you get Killebrew reminiscing, but the thing that I want to talk about is the guy that's here today that I learned how to catch. I watched him play, I watched him catch through my youth, and I found out what not to do. Bob Uecker. Bob, are you here, Bob? Hey, there you, hey, thanks a lot, pal. You're the man. You're the man. We miss you, man. I mean, we miss you. And you're not in the front row either. That's what I like. My heart goes out to one of our Hall of Famers who passed away, the great Warren Spahn from Oklahoma, who was an inspiration to all of us. Right now, a couple of those guys are up there. And you know, the only time to do this is in the 7th inning. So what I really need everybody to stand and join in singing. You know the song. Come on, hey, everybody. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if we ever get back, for it's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame, for it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. All right, let's meet some real new Hall of Famers.
As we continue this afternoon, I would like Commissioner Bud Selig to join me at the podium for the next presentation. I'd also like to call your attention to the video monitor for a short presentation about our 2004 inductee, Paul Molitor.
Paul Molitor enters Cooperstown with one of the sweetest swings from the right side the game has ever seen. Ted Williams compared Molitor's stroke to Joe DiMaggio's, and students of the game marveled at his quick wrists. A determination to succeed, passion for the game, and a never-ending supply of enthusiasm were the hallmarks of this Hall of Fame career. Molitor came into the major leagues with a bang, thanks to his 36 extra base hits in just 125 games with the Brewers. His manager at the time, George Bamberger, said of Molly, he had tremendous instincts, and you could see right away he was a talented athlete, not only physically, but mentally too. He played the game like he had been up here for years. In addition, he has great baseball instincts, the kind you have been born with. In 1982, he had a 3-home-run game and vaulted to the national spotlight with a memorable World Series. Molitor had 7 hits in the first 2 games against the Cardinals, hit .355 for the series. He also set a World Series record with 5 hits in Game 1. In 1987, the 7-time All-Star set a Brewers single-season record with a batting average of .353. That season, he captivated the nation with a 39-game hit streak, the 7th longest in history and the longest since Pete Rose's 44. On July 26th of that season, Molly tied a major league record with 3 stolen bases in 1 inning. As Molitor got older, he seemed to get better. In '93 with the Jays at age 37, he became the oldest player to record a 20-homer, 100 RBI season for the first time in his career. He also added 37 doubles and 22 stolen bases that year. Like Molitor, that season got better the longer it lasted. He had 6 straight hits in the ALCS, guiding the Jays to the World Series.
Paul Molitor, 2-run homer to give the Blue Jays a 7-3 lead.
Paul won the MVP of that series thanks to his 6-game series records for hits. He had 12, runs with 10, triples with 2, extra base hits with 6, and average. He batted .500. He also scored the winning run on Joe Carter's series-clinching homer. Molitor finished his career with his hometown team, the Minnesota Twins. In September of 1996, he recorded his 3,000th career hit. Fittingly, Molitor became the first player to reach that milestone by smacking a triple.
How about that for Paul Molitor? Wow, what a thrill!
Besides Molitor, only Sam Rice had a 200-hit season after reaching 40. Besides Molitor, only Ty Cobb and Rice have had a 300 average over 40 years of age. He finished his 21-year career with 3,319 hits, 234 home runs, 1,307 RBI, 504 stolen bases, and a .306 batting average. And his .418 career average in 55 World Series at-bats reflects his ability to rise to the occasion. Paul Molitor enters Cooperstown as one of the most versatile and gifted players of all time, and certainly one of the truest professionals the game has ever known.
As chairman of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, it's my honor to welcome you into the Hall of Fame family.
Thank you, Jane. My pleasure.
Paul Leo Molitor, Milwaukee Brewers, American League, 1978 to 1992. Toronto Blue Jays, American League, 1993 to 1995. Minnesota Twins, American League, 1996 to 1998. A remarkably consistent contact hitter, an aggressive base runner with extraordinary instincts. One of 3 players with more than 3,000 hits, 600 doubles, and 500 stolen bases. A career .306 hitter, ranks 8th all-time with 3,319 hits. Hit safely in 39 consecutive games in 1987. A great clutch performer as evidenced by his record 5 hits in Game 1 of the 1982 World Series for the Brewers, and World Series MVP honors for the champion Blue Jays in 1993. Elected to 7 All-Star teams. Congratulations, Paul. Welcome to Cooperstown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner, honored guests, Hall of Famers, ladies and gentlemen, and baseball fans everywhere. This truly is a glorious day that the Lord has made. And I'd like to extend my congratulations to Murray and Lon and Dennis. It's an honor to be going in with you guys today. So congratulations. To Jane Clark, Dale Petrosky, Jeff Idelson, Kim Bennett, and the entire staff at the Hall, I just want to thank you for making these last few months so special for me and my family. And to the Baseball Writers Association of America, what can I say? Thanks for voting for me. And I guess not holding being a DH against me. It's such a privilege to stand before you today. The journey that brought me here to Cooperstown was an amazing one, and I'd like to share some of that with you today. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. My mom and dad, 6 sisters and a brother. I loved all sports, but baseball was my passion. When that snow would begin to melt and that grass would start to peek through in the springtime, it was time for baseball. My dad and I used to go out in the backyard, and we had the perfect heights of a fence for a young, aspiring major leaguer to have to leap to his utmost to just steal that home run away. And my dad and I could play that game for hours. I was a huge fan of the Minnesota Twins growing up, and I remember listening to all the games on the radio, waiting to see if my favorite player, Harmon Killebrew, would hit one out. And that 65 series against the Dodgers, for a 9-year-old kid, that was really something. He had Drysdale and Sandy matching up against guys like Harmon and Tony. Couldn't get much better than that. I started my Little League days on the fields of Highland Groveland, and then went on to Linwood and Oxford playgrounds. I used to play on a couple of teams per summer, and I also had a summer job, which was caddying, which was my first job, and I'd always have to ask the caddy master, I got to leave early for my games tonight. Finally, he had to offer me the ultimatum, what do you want to do, make money or play baseball? And I guess I learned later on that you could do both. As I got older, my passion grew and my dreams became more vivid. I played ball at school, of course, first at St. Luke's in St. Paul, and then on to Cretin High School, which I know is very well represented here today. Got a couple hundred in on a charter. I'm grateful to all the coaches that I had growing up who sacrificed their time to help kids like me learn the great game of baseball. But there was one coach who really stood out as being particularly helpful and influential for me both as a ball player and as a young man. And his name is Bill Peterson. I played for Bill for almost 6 years. He was my coach for VFW, American Legion High School. And, he just had a way with our club. Our practices were always full of energy and a lot of chatter, people running all over the place. Anytime we'd have a bad practice, we'd have to line up for a half an hour and do head-first slides. But those were the exception, because Bill had a way of bringing out the best of all of us every day. Bill just also happened to have coached Dave Winfield. Not bad. 2 kids from St. Paul find their way to Cooperstown and both come through Bill Peterson's program. So thanks for everything, Billy Pete. It was on to the University of Minnesota. Play for Dick Siebert and George Thomas. I'm indebted to the university for giving me the chance to continue my education as well as play for a legendary college coach who we fondly refer to as the Chief. Dick was a stickler for fundamentals, and when you practice indoors for 2 months of the wintertime, you get pretty good at them. And one of the reasons I think I got to the major so quickly was that because of Dick's program, I was fundamentally sound, as Dan Patrick would say. And I know Chief was the one who helped me get that way. During my time at Minnesota, I played in a collegiate summer league out in Grand Junction, Colorado, for a man named Sam Supplesio, and even though my summer was cut short when I broke my jaw, Sam and I became good friends and remain that way today. I appreciate you, Sammy. I was drafted by the Brewers after my junior year. A couple of scouts, Tony Siegel and Dee Fondy, thought I was worthy of a first-round selection. Went on to Burlington, Iowa to play for the Bees under Dennis Menke, and it was a great summer in Burlington, winning down there, the Midwest League, and Dennis helped me realize if I was ever going to get to the major leagues, it wasn't going to be as a power hitter, so I canned that idea and started trying to learn how to hit the ball to all fields. It was out of my first major league camp in '78 you know, I survived some pretty ugly days early in camp, as most rookies have. There was even one day when Frank Howard asked me if the scout was drunk when he signed me. But somehow I made the opening day roster, largely due in part to an injury to Robin. And it was the beginning of a very memorable 15 years in Milwaukee. Yes, it was. Harry Dalton and the organization put together quite an amazing team back then, and we had quite a cast of characters. But when you put us all together, we could really play. We knew how to have fun, and we knew how to win. In 1982, we waited until the last day of the season to win the division, and then, of course, falling behind the Angels 0-2 before coming back, and the Brewers finally had themselves their first World Series. I'll always remember late in Game 5 of the playoffs, Cecil Cooper had a big hit. He drove in Jimmy Gantner and Charlie Moore, and an inning later, Rodney hit a ball to Robin at short, and he threw over to Cecil, and County Stadium just went ballistic. I think it was the loudest I ever heard that place. Unfortunately, the Cardinals took us down in Game 7, and I think Ozzie probably remembers that one, wherever's Ozzie at. So I'd like to thank Commissioner Seelig for his leadership and friendship while he owned the Brewers. Bud was a great owner to play for, and he was a true fan of the game. His door was always open, and I often took advantage. We had some great talks about a lot of different things, or as Bud would say, a plethora of things. I learned a great deal from Mr. Seelig. One of the best parts about my time in Milwaukee, and I see both of their jerseys over there, was that Robin Yao and Jim Gantner were my teammates the entire time I was there. In fact, we set the record for longest tenure for 3 teammates on one team at 15 years. You know, Jimmy was what I would call an overachiever, and that's not a knock. It's just he wasn't really picked to be a major league player, and somehow he put together an incredible 17-year career. And, you know, I just got to share a couple of Jimmy's stories. Jimmy had a way with the English language that would make Yogi proud. I'll give you a couple examples. There's a time Jimmy got in a rundown, and somehow he found a way to make contact with the infielder, and he looked at the umpire and he started yelling, "That's construction! That's construction!" I remember doing a clinic with one time for kids, and Jimmy was talking about hitting and the importance of balance, and he was talking about, you know, you got to make sure you stay on the palms of your feet. You know, that'll keep you locked in. Anyways, those are just a couple of Gumbyisms for you. What can I say about Robin? You know, I learned so much from Robin. Although we were contemporaries in age, he had played in the big leagues for 4 years before I got there. You know, Robin had a simple philosophy about playing. What can I do to help my team win today? And believe me, there was a lot of things that Robin Yount could do to help his team win. I'm honored to follow him into the Hall as the second player to wear a Brewers hat on his plaque. Well, the fans of Milwaukee and Wisconsin were always tremendously supportive. There were so many days when I'd arrived at County Stadium and there'd already be 10,000 to 15,000 people in the parking lot 5 hours before game time. I think it's pretty obvious they invented tailgating. And I'll always remember the parade that you put on us in 1982, even though we lost. I always tell people, judging by the reaction of the crowd that day, you would never been able to could tell if did we win or we lose. That's how supported we felt as players. So thank you, Milwaukee fans, for making my time there so special. It was on to Toronto in '93, and I want to thank Paul Beeston and Pat Gillick for bringing me in to try to help the Blue Jays defend their title of '92. Defend it we did, and it had been 11 years since I had been into a World Series, and I was determined to savor every moment. And then there was the moment. With Joe Carter's home run, I was finally able to enter the winner's circle. I'm indebted to the Jays organization for the opportunity, and I'd like to thank them, along with the Blue Jay fans who showed up 4 million strong in '93, for giving me 3 great years in the beautiful city of Toronto. It was time to go back home, complete the circle. Terry Ryan brought me back to Minnesota to play for the team that I followed as a kid. My friends and family could hop in the car and drive down to the Metrodome just like the old days on the playground. You know, I remember the fans giving me a standing ovation my first at bat back in the Metrodome, and I also remember promptly honoring it by striking out. But I had 3 very enjoyable years in Minnesota, playing for Tom Kelly, who I learned a great deal from. And once again, I was able to follow Dave Winfield's path, and, you know, I got my 3,000 hit back at home playing for the Twins, and remarkably, we did it on the exact same date. So Dave and I's career had a lot of parallels. The only downside, going back to Minnesota, other than not winning enough games, was that I had hoped to have a chance to play with Kirby Puckett. And we all know Puck had to retire, unfortunately, at the start of the '96 season with glaucoma. And it would have been great, but Puck, I'm happy to be on your team now. So, appreciate you, brother. I'd like to thank all the managers I had a chance to play for, all the teammates I had a chance to play with, and all my coaches who helped me become a better player. There's, as you can imagine, too many to name, but I'm grateful to all of them. The baseball memories are great, but when you think about it, the people memories are even better. Just to change gears a little bit to talk about friends and family. First of all, I got some buddies here from Minnesota, Kevin, Sean, Bruce, and Danny. You guys have been through it all with me, and it was great to play golf with you yesterday, so I'm glad you guys are here. Greg Groh was my pastor when I was in Milwaukee, and we developed a mentoring relationship that's been going on for many years now. Greg, our trip together to India was one of my life's greatest moments. You encouraged me with how you serve the Lord in your work and in your life. As iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. Greg, you've helped me more than you know. To John Boggs, the man who knows my heart, my joys, and my struggles, you cannot be more loyal than this man. John, our friendship is unique, and I value it very much. And I know I give you a hard time when you call me all the time, but don't ever stop, all right? Ron Simon has been my attorney and friend since 1977. Through thick and thin, Ron, you've never wavered. I'm grateful for your guidance, your wisdom, and your friendship. Your courage has been remarkable, battling Parkinson's for many years now, yet you've never complained, and you've always found something positive. You're a fighter, and you're a winner. Well, to all my aunts and uncles, nephews and nieces and cousins, all like 9,000 of you, I'm so glad that you all came from all over to be here. It means a lot to me, so thank you. To my sisters, Mary Alice, Carol, Vicki, Angie, Judy, and Barbie, we've been through a lot together. Thank you for loving me and supporting me through this life of baseball. You know, in some ways it's kept us apart, in other ways it's brought us very close together. And I might not have thought this when I was young, but it's crystal clear to me now that I'm very blessed to have 6 sisters. To my brother David, I don't know what it'd be like to have a brother who's a professional athlete, but if I did, I hope I would have been a brother to him like you've been to me. You know, you've always taken the high road, and I'll always remember the letter that you sent me when you opened up your heart. It's been great to have you share in this journey with me. I appreciate you. My mom, Kathleen, was a huge baseball fan. When I was young, she shared stories of how she used to go to Lexington Park in St. Paul to watch the minor league games. She talked of seeing the likes of Willie Mays and Roy Campanella coming through the Twin Cities. You know, somehow amidst raising 8 kids, she managed to see me play a lot of games. But my mom always thought she was a jinx. You know, she'd come to the games and she'd watch them from her car, or she'd hide behind the tree. And it was strange because it continued even to the major leagues. You know, I'd leave her seats in the family section and couldn't find her. You know, she'd walk around looking for an empty seat. It was kind of like, where's Waldo? You know, where's my mom? But I'll certainly never forget all that my mom did for me. We had the most incredible visit in spring training shortly before she suddenly passed away in 1988. And it was just very open and very intimate. It was like that she knew she'd be going to heaven soon. So I thank God for giving us that special time, and I miss you and I love you, Mom. So My dad, Richard, had tremendous work ethic, and that's probably the number one thing that I learned from him. He found a way to support 8 kids and keep us all very happy. He was never the kind of dad to put pressure on his kids. He'd have a pat on the back for a well-played game and a word of encouragement when I would stink, basically. Never really meddled in my business, just, hey, go out there and have some fun. It was just 2 years ago that my dad was courageously battling cancer, and thankfully I was working in Minnesota at the time, and I got to see him quite a bit. We had some, great talks during that summer. One of my sisters shared with me that he had told his doctors that they better get him healthy because he had a date in Cooperstown in 2 years. And I know how much he wanted to be here. So, words I'll never forget were my dad's to me the last time I saw him. He said, "I'm so proud to have you as my son, and I love you." And so, I love you too, Dad. I miss you. All right. To my daughter Blair, you're such a beautiful person, and you matured into such an incredible young woman. And I know that you had to sacrifice a lot because your dad played baseball, and I traveled and I worked. But the memories we do have, they mean so much to me. I love you very much, and I'm very proud of you, and I'm really glad you're here. So. Joshua, I know that better days are ahead for us. Linda, I know that you made many sacrifices as well. Your unselfishness allowed me to immerse myself in baseball while you cared for Blair, and I'm grateful for the things that you did for me. To my wife, Destiny, I'm a blessed man to have had you come into my life. You have given me much love and happiness, as well as our precious daughter, Julia. I love you very much. And to Julia, I know at 11 months, you're too young to understand me now, but I want you to know how much joy you bring me and how much your daddy loves you. To you both, I'm excited about what our future brings. I'd like to thank God for his many, many blessings in my life, including my salvation that he's allowed me through his son, Jesus. I know the giftedness I had to play this game came from him. Why someone can hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and someone else can certainly isn't something you can take credit for. So, Lord, I give you all the glory for the things you've allowed me to accomplish, including being inducted to the Hall of Fame. My time's almost up, but in closing, my dreams never took me to Cooperstown. Like most of these guys, and probably all of them, I didn't play the game to get here. I played the game because I loved it. That being said, it's the Hall of Fame. It's that magical place. It's that place that transcends time, where baseball is respectful, traditional, simple, and pure. I look behind me and I see a group of incredible men. Some of these men are the gentlemen that helped fuel my passion as a youngster. And then there are other men that I had a chance to either compete against, or play with. And of course, there are the other Hall of Famers who aren't able to be here today. Together, they compile an amazing fraternity of baseball brothers that parallel the history of this great game. And I want to thank them all for making me feel so welcome and embracing me into the family of the Hall of Fame. And all the fans that came out today, I appreciate you more than you know sharing in this day with me. Thank you, everybody, and God bless you.
As we continue, I would like to ask Commissioner Seelig to join me, and again to call your attention to the video monitor for a short presentation about our 2004 inductee, Dennis Eckersley.
Dennis Eckersly once said his biggest fear was failure. It was fear, as well as impeccable control, great movement, and tenacity, which drove him to greatness. And he is a Hall of Famer because above all the saves and the wins, he failed fewer times than any closer in history.
He was kind of the car keys reliever. When Eckersley comes to the mound, people start reaching for their car keys.
As soon as he came in the game, the guys that wrote the newspapers just started doing the story right there.
It is convenient but misleading to say his failure as a starting pitcher is why he became a reliever. In fact, his success as a starter is a major reason why he's in the Hall. In 1975, his rookie year, he won 13 games for the Indians. He remains the last American League pitcher to win that many games in a season before turning 21. He won 20 games in 1978. He and John Smoltz are the only pitchers to win 20 in a season and save 50 in another. He threw a no-hitter. He is one of 3 pitchers to have a no-no and a 40-save season in their career. Eckersley won 149 games as a starter. His 197 career wins are the most by a pitcher with 75 saves. He and Charlie Hough are the only pitchers to start and relieve in 350 games. A's manager Tony La Russa made Eckersley a reliever in 1987 after he struggled for 1 year as a starter for the woeful Cubs. It was a match made in Cooperstown. From 1988 to 1992, Eckersley saved 220 games, the most in history for any 5-year span. His 1989-90 seasons were the most efficient back-to-back seasons ever. He had more saves than base runners allowed. In 149 1/3 innings, he walked only 7 batters and struck out 128. In '89, he set the record for fewest base runners allowed per 9 innings, 5.6, in a season of at least 50 innings. The next year, he broke his own record with 5.5. Eric Gagne's 6.6 base runners allowed per 9 innings done last season is a distant 3rd all-time.
It almost looked like he just was looking through one eye. He closed the other eye. It looked like he was shooting a gun.
He reminded me like one of the musketeers coming out there. Okay, zip, 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 and throw strike, strike, strike.
This was like Muhammad Ali as a closer. You know how Muhammad used to pick the round in poetry and then do it in the fight? Well, Eck was kind of like that. He was going to pick how many pitches he was going to strike you out on and then do it.
Eckersley won the AL Cy Young in 1992 at age 37. Only Willie Stargell and Barry Bonds won major awards at older ages. Eckersley has 15 postseason saves. Only Mariano Rivera has more. Eckersley's 390 saves are the 3rd most of all time. Only Trevor Hoffman has more with one team than Eckersley did for the A's. He and La Russa redefined the role of relievers. Their success led mostly to the defined roles in the bullpen, and all roads lead to the closer. And no one did it better than Eckersley. And right to the end, he pitched with style and with flair. His whip-like delivery, his flapping hair, and his celebratory fist pump became his signature. He had his own language. Beer was oil. Money was iron. And what Kirk Gibson did to him in Game 1 of the 1988 World Series was, as Eckersley called it, a walk-off homer. That was a rare failure for the Eck. In his case, fear did not strike out.
Welcome to the Hall of Fame family. Commissioner?
Dennis Lee Eckersley, Cleveland Indians, American League, 1975 to 1977. Boston Red Sox, American League, 1978 to 1984. Chicago Cubs, National League, 1984 to 1986. Oakland Athletics, American League, 1987 to 1995. St. Louis Cardinals, National League, 1996 and 1997. A top starting pitcher early in his career who became a dominant closer, combining a blazing fastball and a devastating slider, pinpoint control, and a deceptive sidearm delivery to save 390 games. From 1988 through 1993, struck out 458 hitters while walking only 51. His Oakland Athletic teams appeared in 3 consecutive World Series from 1988 through 90, winning in 1989. Won the American League MVP and Cy Young Awards in 1992. As starter, completed 100 games and pitched a no-hitter for the Cleveland Indians in 1977. He was elected to 6 All-Star teams. Welcome to Cooperstown, Dennis.
You have to bear with me for a second here. I'm getting old. Man, that's something. Good job, Paul. First of all, I want to thank you, Bud. Thank you very much. I want to thank Jane Clark, Chairman of the Hall of Fame. I want to thank Dale Petrosky, the President of the Hall of Fame, and the entire Hall of Fame staff. It's been a wonderful stay. I mean, they've been so welcoming. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I'd like to also thank the Baseball Writers Association of America for that day on January 6th, 2004. I was humbled and overwhelmed by your support, and I'd like also to thank my friends, family, and former teammates who made the journey to Cooperstown, especially the people who came all the way from Oakland, because it means so much to me. And to the 50 Hall of Famers sitting behind me, I am truly humbled and in awe of standing here in front of you. There's no words I could convey to tell you what it feels like to be in your company. I always dreamed of being a Major League Baseball player, but I never dreamed of being in the Hall of Fame. I could have never envisioned myself standing next to my childhood idols, Juan Marichal and Willie Mays. They were the best, I'm telling you. It's an honor to be inducted with Paul Molitor. I'm also honored to be honored with Paul Molitor, Lon Simmons, and Murray Chase. Paul, you're among the greatest that ever played this game, and most importantly, those who respect the game with all your heart. You were one of the smartest players in the game, and you did it all. You hit for average, you hit for power, you had the quickest bat in the game. And I'll tell you what, you were an all-round pain to deal with. Lon Simmons, you know, as a kid, I'd listen to games on the radio late at night and listen to Lon. And Lon, you are a true gentleman, an incredible broadcaster, and it's an honor to be going to the Hall of Fame with you. And Murray, you're a very gifted and knowledgeable writer, and I want to congratulate you on the honor too. Thank you. Most importantly, I'd like to thank my family for the love you've given me and the sacrifices you've made for me. This day is a tribute to my mom and dad. I love you both so much. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your unwavering support. My parents were there for me, and they're here for me now. And my dad struggled to get here today, and both of us knew nothing could have stood in the way of us sharing this moment together.
What did it feel like? How does it feel now? And look out, Jerry.
If you happen to join us late or perhaps just want to relive the moments, the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies can be seen again tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 out on the West Coast over on ESPN2. Hopefully you'll tune in for that. Get a chance to hear Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley once again as they give their acceptance speeches and join baseball heroes here in Cooperstown. Reese Davis and Tim Kirkshin back with you on Hall of Fame weekend. And though they were able to give their Hall of Fame speeches, there are still questions that must be answered by the 2 newest members of the Hall of Fame. George Grand is standing by with Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley. George?
Thanks, Reese. Are there questions still to be answered? No, I think it's just a great feeling, isn't it, Eck? Unbelievable.
I'll tell you what, it's a relief. I hate to say that, but it's really a relief.
Yeah.
It's so emotional for me, and I knew it was going to be.
How you guys doing?
Whatever comes after this is easy.
Yeah. Molly, when you think back and you talk, there's so many moments, so many years, but that the 82 year in Milwaukee were just so special. That clubhouse with Robin and that whole group.
That we had a cast of characters, to say the least, as we talked about earlier, and we had been building up for the last few years to get to that 82 series, getting closer and getting closer. When you talk about, Gorman and Vuk and Raleigh and Simba and Benji, I mean, it was just one after another. And that was probably my most enjoyable whole season throughout the 21. 93, the highlight of winning and everything is probably #1 memory. But that 82 season, that was the most special.
What was the toughest emotional part about delivering the speech today? Looking out there and seeing those people?
I don't know, for you, Dennis, but for me, I just kind of so much anticipation, and you've been waiting since you got the phone call, and then finally it's just imminent that you have to get up there and address the people and look the family in the face and in the eyes, and tell them how much they mean to you, and it's definitely emotional, but the support and the reaction of the crowd certainly helped get you through it.
Heck, you've covered so much ground, and there's so much emotion that it had to be draining to prepare for it and to deliver it.
I mean, it was even, putting it together. I mean, there's so many different phases of your life when you look back over. 24 years, I was a lot of different people in 24 years. That alone, with all the people that I played with, and all the memories, and you don't want to leave anybody out, because every place I played was special. Every city I played in, every manager, every player. I mean, there's so many special people. And then you get so emotional when it starts talking about family and the people that you love. And man, it's hard. It's hard to get through it.
Yeah, I was with Tony La Russa this last week, and I said, how did he affect you the most? What did he teach you the most about baseball? And you and I talked about it. He said you taught him the difference between good fear and bad fear. Bad fear is when, whatever we do in life, you're afraid to do your job. Good fear is taking that energy, that fear, and working it as a positive.
I mean, he taught me a lot of things, but more than anything, he had confidence in me. And I had said something in the speech about Tony. Some of the times when you need somebody is when you're not going very good. I mean, when he'd slip me a note, I mean, you don't know what that means to a guy. You think it's just a pat on the back. He'd slip me a note and tell me just something to get me going, because he knew how I used to take those losses. And that's what I remember about Tony more than anything.
I love that story, man. That's cool that he would do that.
It is cool, man.
2 questions for both of you. First, Molly, you were the first guy to get here primarily as a designated hitter. You're a great all-around player. Do you think this opens some doors for DHs?
I think that generally if people's offensive numbers stack up, so to speak, that, they'll get in. Baseball has had the DH now, 30-some years? I'm not sure exactly the number. The players shouldn't be penalized for filling a role that the game has in the game. And hopefully that DHs or people that get most of their success in the DH role will be rewarded if that's what their career warrants.
Heck, you and I have talked a lot about those closers, those guys who end games that pitch 2, 3, 4 innings and aren't in the Hall of Fame that you think deserve to be in the Hall.
Yeah, and once again, you start talking about, you can't really fault the relievers of today because they're just doing the job that they're supposed to do. These guys from before, though, had to go pitch 125 innings. I mean, so I appreciate them. Who am I to say, though? I'm not voting, but there's guys like, Suter and Gossage, 2 guys right offhand, that to me were dominant, and they should be here someday, I would think.
You guys are here. Congratulations. It was a great day. Great day, Molly.
George?
Great day.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Appreciate having us on.
Some answers, some questions still as we look ahead to the future. Reese, Timmy?
All right, George, thank you very much, and certainly an emotional moment for both guys. And as we said early on in the broadcast, most of the Hall of Famers you talk to, no matter how much you practice the speech, it's going to get to you at some point. Dennis Eckersley mentioned it when you started talking about family. Tim and I will talk more about the inductions of Dennis Eckersley and Paul Molitor, what it might mean in the future. There is Paul Molitor with his plaque. Dennis Eckersley, likewise, both of them will be on the wall of the Hall of Fame tonight. We'll continue with our coverage from Cooperstown after this. Back in Cooperstown, the festivities wrapping up after the induction ceremonies for Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersley, the two men going in to the Baseball Hall of Fame this year. Eckersley, 390 saves, Molitor over 3,300 hits, put up great numbers. Tim, as you and I both talked to Hall of Famers throughout the weekend about what the speech meant to them and what they feared the most about the speech, almost every one of them said to me, don't forget anyone. Evident in the speeches you heard today?
Absolutely. Molitor didn't forget anybody, but mostly he singled out Robin Yount. I can't tell you how many times in the 80s especially I watched Paul Molitor single the lead off a game, steal second, and score on a hit by Robin Yount. It happened all the time, except, of course, for the one game in 1987 when Tom Trebelhorn, the manager of the Brewers, told Molitor, here's what's going to happen in the first inning tonight. You're going to get a single, and then you're going to steal second, third, and home in the first inning. And on that game, he singled in the first and stole second, third, and home in the first inning. First guy in 13 years to do that. That was Paul Molitor. He and Cal Ripken are the smartest players I've ever seen. Eckersley today, of course, thanked everybody also, and he singled out Rick Honeycutt, who was the left-handed setup guy for Eckersley. And I was talking to Honeycutt last night at the party, and I said, Cutter, I can't believe how many strikes that Eck used to throw. And he said, no, you've got it wrong. He never threw a strike. His control was so good. He was this far off the outside corner and this far off the inside corner every single time. Molitor was saying the other day, he said, managers used to tell him against Eckersley, go up there and take a strike. And he'd say, take a strike. The first pitch is always a strike from Eckersley. In the end, that was his ultimate strength, the greatest control pitcher I've ever seen.
You look at these two guys, and we heard from both of them a few moments ago about what their inclusion in the Hall of Fame now might mean to others who played their positions. Molitor as a DH, Eckersley as a closer.
Well, I honestly don't think it's going to help him too much in this case. Paul Molitor was a complete player. He was a great runner to the end of his career. He was not a one-dimensional DH like we see with, say, Harold Baines or today Edgar Martinez. Those are different animals than what Paul Molitor was. And as for Eckersley, he basically invented the one-inning save, he and Tony La Russa. But as we said before, he did it better than anybody else did it. So the guys who do it today, I really don't think are going to be helped so much because they don't do it as well as Eckersley did it.
390 saves for him, 197 wins, those years as a starter also too, making Eckersley a most unique member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Certainly a memorable day for Dennis Eckersley. As he mentioned, the most difficult part is when you start talking about family and people that you love. Dennis Eckersley and his son sharing a moment here in Cooperstown. Back here in Cooperstown, Hall of Fame induction ceremonies are done. Time for a little wiffle ball. It's tough to hit that nasty splitter with the wiffle ball there. Fell right off the table. Maybe that was a curve. We've got a very high angle on the wiffle ball game, just not too far away from the stage here where Dennis Eckersley and Paul Molitor were just inducted into the Hall of Fame. Somewhat conspicuous by his absence on this weekend every year, at least his absence from the podium, is Pete Rose. This year, Tim, Pete Rose released his book around the same time that the Hall of Fame announcements came out. What are your thoughts about Rose's chances of making it into the Hall?
Well, about 9 months ago, I thought they were pretty good. He was clearly moving in that direction towards reinstatement and maybe being put on the ballot. But since then, I think a lot of things have shifted. Pete's admittance of guilt has not helped him, certainly, with the public. Then coming out with his book the same week that Eckersley and Molitor were elected to the Hall of Fame. His timing was absolutely terrible on that. I think it was a PR coup to get him in the Hall of Fame at some point. But since then, public sentiment has shifted where I don't think Bud Selig's going to let him in anytime soon, especially since a number of Hall of Famers have come out basically saying we don't want him in the Hall of Fame, including Frank Robinson, who told me that pointedly this spring.
And time's running out before he would have to go before the Veterans Committee, correct?
Right, and I'm not sure he's got a very good shot with the Veterans Committee. I think he's got a better shot with the writers, but I don't think he's got a good shot with either the veterans or the writers.
So the tide has turned certainly over the last few months in regard to Pete Rose's chances of perhaps making the Hall of Fame. We will continue with our coverage here from Cooperstown on a day in which Paul Molitor and Dennis Eckersly made it into the Hall. I wonder who he came to see. Oh, of course, with the long hair, it had to be Molitor, right?